Whether you're picking and grinning or just grinning, grab a drink, pull up a seat. It's time for Roots Music Rambler. Turn it up.
What's the story now about you being thrown out, literally, of a club in New York City? What?
Yeah. What? Technically wasn't New York City. It was Hoboken, New Jersey. But it harkens back to if you know the comedian Ron White, it's like, I was thrown out of a bar in New York City. Well, that happened to me, sort of. It was across the river in Hoboken. I was living in Jersey City Heights. I was working in Manhattan. This was right when I was right out of college. It was, a long time ago. And my roommate and I, and a friend of ours from grad school, the three of us, and the friend happened to be a female. We go to this bar in Hoboken, and the bartendress, and it was wintertime, so we had our jackets. Well, we were on the end of the bar next to the wall, and we stacked our three jackets up by the wall, and then the next three seats were us, and I was kind of on the curve of the bar, and Joe I can't remember the name of the person who was with us. Anyway, Leslie was her name. Sorry. So Joe and Leslie were beside me. So the bartendress, who was this little like gymnast looking gal, jumps over the bar right by Leslie and accidentally knocks our coats off onto the floor. And so Joe, being, clever and, trying to milk it for all it's worth, mentions to her a few minutes later, hey, that little pole vault trick you did there was cool, but you knocked our coats off. Think we could maybe get around. He's just trying to milk it. And she kind of looks at him real smart ass. It's like, no. And she turns to walk away. Well, Joe had a little fiery temper at the time, and he did not take too kindly to that. So he decided that he was going to, I suppose, accidentally knock his beer off of the bar into the floor. And when he did that, some lady saw him and said, oh my God, that guy just knocked his beer onto the floor. So he looked at her and knocked my beer onto the floor.
Oh my God.
Because he was young and fiery and stupid. And I'm just sitting there drinking a beer. I wasn't doing anything. I really literally was not. If I was doing something, I would claim it.
Yeah.
But Joe was making a point to this bartender who was rather rude, even though he was asking for free beer. And when the second beer, before it hit the floor, I was lifted out of my chair, my bar stool, by two bouncers and carried to the door and thrown into the street. And when I say thrown, I'm not, channeling Ron White here. I literally was airborne for a couple of seconds, like going through the air and landing on the sidewalk. Oh. And Joe was also thrown, probably a little harder than I was, because he was the guy who did it. And I guess they saw him. And then Leslie just kind of grabbed the coats and walked out. They didn't do anything to her, of course. But yeah, we were not treated very well for a couple of minutes there out on the street in Hoboken by these guys. I won't say I was assaulted. That's not fair to say, but I was sore for a couple of days after that one. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. Fun times.
I can honestly and proudly say I've never been physically removed from a drinking establishment. So you got one on me there.
I got 6 or 7 on you, but that's the one you asked me about. So that's the one I told you about. Welcome to Roots Music Rambler. She's Frank.
And he's Falls.
And we're rambling on through the stories behind the music we love.
Yes. And today on the show, speaking of New Jersey, we are talking to the incredibly talented folk rock duo Jackson Pines. That is the name of the band, not a person. Jackson Pines consists of Joe Makoviecki, who handles the vocals, guitar, and writes the songs, and stand-up bass player James Black. There are more band members that accompany them at times, and if it's just the two of them or the full band, they always sound great. They have a new single out now, a new album coming soon, and we are so excited to have them on the show.
Yeah, as Francesca said, they're from New Jersey. They have this folk rock sound that reminds me a little bit. Their kind of full band sound reminds me a little bit of Turnpike Troubadours, and then maybe a little Sunday Best as well when they're just the two of them. There's really healthy country and bluegrass influences there. One song I heard, which we'll play some of today, I immediately thought, oh, that sounds like Whiskey Town or Ryan Adams. Like they're really good stuff.
Yeah.
And an interesting variety. And they talk about the variety in the show. And I'll let Frank explain a little bit more of this, but I love the fact that as we were talking to them, they got really into the whole purpose of Roots Music Rambler and really went into the roots of their music. Frank, did you? I know you were taking notes, I think, weren't you?
I was taking notes and I was absolutely captivated. So Joe reached out via Instagram. And I think it was after the episode with Renee Maskin came out because she's also from New Jersey.
Yep.
So I'm assuming, like, they all kind of know each other, right? From the same region there.
Mm-hmm.
And so Joe reached out via Instagram and basically he cold messaged us. And I think that takes a lot of guts. And even before that, though, I was like, okay, so before responding, I checked out their bio and their website and, checked out some music. And immediately I was like, these are the guys, right? This is why I started Roots Music Rambler, because their music is heavily influenced by where they're from, the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. And if you, like me, had no idea what Pine Barrens is, well, in the later on in the episode, you're going to find out. Okay. But I was so intrigued and interested that their music was so like fueled and rooted in the region of New Jersey that they're from. And, I listened to a couple of songs and I was like, oh, yeah, these guys, we have to have them on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so glad that they reached out and that we were able to make it happen.
Yeah. Fascinating guys, fascinating story. And as you'll hear, Joe does a lot of the talking. James admitted he's the quiet one. But Joe does a lot of talking, but I literally feel like I have a master's degree in New Jersey folk music after talking to these guys. And I think you'll probably feel the same way when you hear the interview today. Super interesting conversation, really smart guys, really fun. And we love their music. You're going to hear several cuts today. And so we hope you'll go and check them out. We also on the show, we're going to do our normal pickin and grinnin segment and share our picks for whose music is making us grin. They might be new artists, might be old, but they'll sure be good. Before we kick it all off, though, I have something to share. And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus or pick a fight or anything like that. But I'm a member of several Facebook groups that focus on record collecting or vinyl records. And I'm saying this very carefully because I posted a discussion topic in one of these groups. And within nanoseconds, it was taken down. And I was a little dismayed. I got into a private conversation with a couple people about this topic because I was genuinely interested in what people had to say from this group. It was all sparked by, and remember, this is a record collection group, and probably in their defense, they've probably had this argument ad infinitum and they're tired of hearing about it. So that's why they probably took it down. So I'm not pissed at anybody. But I saw someone in this group posted a meme, and it was the Samuel L. Jackson scene from Pulp Fiction where he's holding the gun on the kid at the beginning, and he says, "Say what one more time?" You know, that one. And the meme was edited to say, "Say vinyl one more time." And so I posted this question, say, "Hey, bear with me and hear me out here. I'm genuinely interested in the perspectives on this." And this is what I kind of wrote in the post. I said, "I'm a trained journalist, so I know the word vinyls isn't an accurate and proper way to identify a record. I have a vinyl collection is also not technically correct. But when people say those things, we all know what they're talking about, and life is not a term paper. So why do people get so uptight about it?" And then I went on to say, for the record, the word record wasn't an acceptable word for anything other than a written document before the phonograph was invented. So if we all want to be hall monitors, there isn't a literal traditional English language identifier for those black round things other than maybe a disc. Now, again, I'm all for minding rules and norms, But I also think people who get upset about regionalisms or popular cultural trends in language need to pop a gummy, fix a cocktail, and chill the fuck out. So, my question for them, I said, for you grammar nerds, and I'm partially one, so I don't say that as an insult. Why can't we say, I love vinyls, or I'm into vinyls, or she calls them records because she doesn't have the same passion I do for vinyls? Why can't we say that? And my argument is life is not a term paper. Everybody knows what we're talking about. Chill the fuck out. Francesca, your thoughts?
Woo! Okay. So, huh. Let me preface this by saying that I am a grammar Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I always have been. I am a literature teacher. I teach writing. I've always been a writer. I had a very successful travel blog for so many years. So when you were saying, you were talking about the meme and, like referring to vinyls, it made me think of, and this involves a different language, a language other than English, so maybe it's not the right analogy, but it drives me crazy when people call, like, the pasta, the little pouches that are filled with like ricotta cheese or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and you have a bowl of them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not raviolis, okay? They're
It's
ravioli.
ravioli.
Right? Ravioli, that word in Italian is already plural.
Yeah.
Same thing with panini. Okay. A panini is more than one sandwich. The Italian word is panino. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I get really fired up about this. And my friend Paula, who is from Poland, now lives in Paris, but she and I have had these conversations too, because she's from Poland and it drives her crazy when people say pierogies, right? Pierogi is already
Is
plural.
plural. Yes.
So I totally get it. I get it because I am the same way. At the same time, I agree with you. Life isn't a term paper, like maybe we should take it a little bit easier. It's hard for me to do though. And that's just me. Like, it's not like everybody I know. I
Right.
talked about my one friend who shares the same thought. But, to have a group of people come down on you for that one
Yeah.
faux pas, I mean, is it even a mistake? I don't know. But, and we've talked about our Facebook nerd music groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
The group I've talked about, I'm going where there's no depression, is very chill, very relaxed. However, I have been a member in other groups, maybe still am in some, where the moderators really take their role seriously.
Yeah.
And those are the people that really need to chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was the moderators who had an issue with that, but sometimes I feel like those Facebook group moderators are like, okay, like you don't have a badge, right? Um, you're not driving around in a squad car, like chill the fuck out.
Those people are members of homeowners associations. Guaranteed.
Most
Guaranteed.
definitely.
That is the adult version of the hall monitor, and they want to be all up in other people's business, telling them how to behave. And you know what? If that's your thing in life, that's your thing in life. Own it, love it, be proud of it. That's fine. But
And I
don't,
do. I tell
yeah,
everybody I'm a grammar Nazi, and
sure.
I am a proud supporter of the Oxford comma.
Well, I just want to make sure that in a couple of weeks when I come up to Chicago, your mom makes me some spaghettis. How about that? We're sipping on a bourbon and I'm out, so we'll take a quick break for a refill. Take a moment, if you will, and listen to more about the awesome sponsors that help make the show happen, including Muskox flannels. We love Muskox flannels. They're buttery soft and built like a tank. You put these things on, and immediately people want to rub you. So there you go. Go muskox.com/Rambler. Use the
I
code
can't
Rambler.
stand you.
Use the code Rambler and you'll get a discount. And if you $10 of every $100 purchase goes to save the actual muskoxes up here in the Alaskas and the Great White Norths and stuff. So they do good things for the earth and the animals on it. And they do good things for humans too, because Man, these things are nice. When we come back, Joe and James from Jackson Pines will join us. Don't go away. This is Ridiculous and Roots Music Rambler. Hey, Ramblers, I have experienced a revolution in sound in my house, and you can too. The revolution is driven by Sonos. The Sonos wireless music system lets you play any song in any room, control it all with the Sonos app on your phone or tablet. Sonos has all the connections to give you millions of songs and stations, including connecting to your iTunes, your Spotify, Pandora, and more. Get a wireless Sonos player and hear the sound quality difference. Then get one for all the rooms in your house where you listen, but might be out of reach of the stereo or Bluetooth speaker you normally use. So I've got one in my bedroom and bathroom for when I get ready in the morning. I've got one in the kitchen and living room for when I'm hanging out with friends. And then down here in the office den for when I'm working or setting up for another episode of the show. I happen to like the Sonos Move, which is one of the speaker models. I can put it out on my patio for cookouts. It's a weather-resistant design, has an 11-hour battery life, so I don't need to plug it in out there when I have people over for cookouts or tailgates or whatever. And I can play music on all or just a few of the speakers, so I never lose my jams going from room to room. Try the Move and hear the difference, then hook up all the rooms in your house for an excellent listening experience while you move around cleaning or dancing or whatever you do in the privacy of your own home. Listen to Roots Music Rambler on it, for God's sakes. It makes me sound even more handsome. Go to rootsmusic.link/Sonos, S-O-N-O-S, rootsmusic.link/Sonos. That'll take you right to the Sonos Move speaker page to purchase. I highly recommend it, and you'll love how much better your music and podcasts sound. Go to rootsmusic.link/Sonos. That's rootsmusic.link/Sonos.
I knew a guy when I was 17 who played electric guitar in the basement scene. Lived with his mom and sold LSD. He was a teenage dream. Check a strap on a red Jaguar. His pedal board, his whammy bar. Late nights driving in his car. He used to scream, and the song would flow out the window, and his voice would rise and soar. The throat got closed and he don't sing no more.
That is a cut called Basement Days from Jackson Pines' 2021 album, Close to Home. They've got a newer album that came out last year called Pine Barrens Volume 1. It's a collection of songs that either originated or made a home in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. And they have a third album from 2017 called Purgatory Road. And guess what? Joe and James are here with us today. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing great.
Very good.
Well, good. We're
Thank you so much for having us.
Beautiful day.
yeah, we're glad to have you and excited to talk a little bit about your music. So I guess the place to start is, how did you two come to meet each other and play music together?
So me and James are from the same hometown, which is Jackson, New Jersey, which if you took a dart and you threw it at the bullseye right in the middle of the little state that we have here, it's just about right dead center in the state, if you can imagine that, which makes us about halfway between Philadelphia and New York City. So we're right there on that 95 corridor. That's, people know that on the eastern half of it, on the shore from Maine all the way to Florida. So we're right kind of in the northeast there. And we went to, James went to the public school and I went to a Catholic school a town over. But we met each other when we were about 13, 14 years old, because there was a huge music scene where we grew up. There was this huge local music scene in Jackson, but really more like this 2-county area right in the middle of the state, where there was, I swear, there was like 100 or 200 local bands in like from the years 2003 to like 2006, 7, just from our little slice of the state. And there were shows every weekend, whether it was in a church hall, VFW, or whether it was in someone's basement or backyard, or even if it was at like a legit venue, like the Stone Pony, which is in Asbury Park, that was, made famous by Bruce Springsteen and whatnot. But usually these were DIY shows. And so me and James just started running into each other a lot. And then he was always a bass player in punk bands and stuff. And I was playing acoustic guitar in like emo bands and rock bands and stuff like that. And then over the years, we just became friends. And then years and years later, we started playing in a band together. So James could maybe pick up the thread there. We started jamming together.
Yeah, like Joe said, people say there's no Central Jersey, but I think there is, and we live in it, and it very much is like a melting pot of all these different, just people interested in all kinds of things, and especially when you get to music, like there's in our town, is like especially even the surrounding ones. There's any kind of music you want to pursue, you can go ahead and find friends to hang out with and do that, and it's kind of like representative of the state and how it is because you can be in Philly in an hour, you can be in New York in an hour, you can go skiing if you want, you can go hop on a surfboard, so it's pretty like it comes full circle with the music stuff. And then that's what we did growing up, we would play these shows, there'd be all kinds of different musicians playing and everybody would just hang out and go from there and follow whatever avenue you wanted to go down, so it's a good place to be, because you can really do and pursue whatever the heck you want and find a crowd or following for it. So it's nice.
We had Renee Maskin on not long ago, who is outside of, she's in Asbury Park. And interestingly enough, she is also was in a punk kind of emo band, and now is more of a folk acoustic singer songwriter. Is that what happens when you get older in New Jersey? You kind of transition over into the folk music?
Yeah, I grew up with my parents, Yeah, but for me anyway, like my parents have a long driveway and they had a dumpster at the end of it. So I used to have to, before I could drive, I used to take my mom's car and take the garbage out. And she had like Johnny Cash CDs in there and all kinds of random. She had all walks of life, but Johnny Cash kind of grabbed me. And then I heard him singing Ring of Fire even before that in our shop. And then one day I heard Social Distortion cover it, Mike Ness, and I was like, oh wait, so he can do that, so maybe this stuff is kind of cool, and it kind of like, because I was really into punk music then, but I was like, maybe there's something that came before this that's actually cooler than this, and find out that story about it. So that was mine anyway. But
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the progression? Like, people like whether it's someone from, a punk band, like even going back to the Clash, and then him like discovering the folk world musics and working that into his Joe Strummer's solo career later on with the Mescaleros, or whether it's someone like Brian Regan, who, you transform into a folk singer once you hit like 35 or 40 perhaps. But the bug hit us a little earlier, I guess. But like James was saying, there'd be a show and you'd have like a hardcore metal band, a straight edge, like DC hardcore band. And the next band would be like this emo group. The next band would be this like folk punk band from like, somewhere like, Boston or like Ohio or something. And then the next band would be totally different. And that just kind of melting pot just kind of made a lot of influences sort of mix up and kind of connect the dots. But for us, really what happened was I was in a band in high school. And when I went to college in New York City, and my band broke up. And at that time, a bunch of my friends from Jackson started to come visit me, mainly because I lived in New York City, not because they really wanted to hang out with me. So they'd come up on Friday and leave on Monday morning and sleep in my dorm all weekend. And we started playing songs in the parks, like Washington Square and Union Square. And, we were always into people like Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and Neil Young. And, we always wondered, though, what was the music that they were into? Like, why did Neil Young make the music he made? Why did Bob Dylan make the music he made? Why did Johnny Cash record the music he made? And we quickly discovered music from the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. And that being one of the things that influenced a lot of those 60s artists. The other thing, of course, being R&B and soul music. But the other half of that piece was this like folk music from the 40s. So being in New York and playing in clubs and meeting people in Washington Square, we just kind of started picking up that tradition. And then one day we got invited to go up the Hudson River to this little town called Beacon. And it turned out that that's the town that Pete Seeger settled in. He was from New York City, but he settled up in Beacon. And we got to meet him at this thing called the Hudson River Sloop Club Society. And they would have this monthly environmentalism meeting. And at the end of each meeting, there'd be this circle of song where anyone could just play. It's not an open mic. It's like controlled chaos, but it's a circle of people, and everyone down the line gets a chance to play a tune. And I'm sure you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. But for the story's sake, we went up there and, we got to play these folk songs that we were learning at the time in front of like people who'd grown up with it for 40, 50 years. And Pete Seeger himself would be there sometimes. And that just changed our lives. So soon around then, James stopped playing with our friend's band. We used to play shows together in different bands for years. And then when he became a free agent, our newly fledgling folk band said, hey, you want to play with us? And James actually taught himself how to play stand-up bass to join our band. He'd been an electric bass player for years, but he then started coming up to New York with us, and we got to like Pete Seeger actually even, stood up one time and sang with us, which was like one of those moments that solidified that like doing what we do, which is a little bit of traditional folk music, but a lot of writing our own original folk songs too, which is like what Pete's friend Woody Guthrie did. Was he didn't play a lot of traditionals. He played all originals, but is still one of those American folk singers. So we've kind of split it half and half and do a little bit of both. But James, you could tell that story of when, we were in a town called New Egypt, New Jersey, believe it or not. And we asked him to join the band, and you can tell him how you taught yourself how to play.
Yeah, like Joe said, I always played electric bass, and I've seen an upright bass, once or twice in my life. And then I'd fool around with it a little. But when they asked me, I hadn't been in the band in a few months, and I kind of had the itch, and they're like, well, can you figure out the upright? And my friend Matt had this horrible upright bass in his mom's house in the corner for like 10 years. It's basically like a piece of plywood with it was like a shoebox with strings on it. It sounded terrible. It was terrible, but he gave it to me, and I would put on albums and records and just play along to whatever I, could make noise out of it. And I kind of got the fingering down and the hand patterns. And I'm still learning every day with it. But that's what got me my foot in the door with that. Was just, it was a horrible bass, but it had some great times with it. And then I got another one gifted by our old horn player, Jim Doyle. And then I got a better one from David Gage in New York City, which is probably the nicest bass I'll ever have. But yeah, so that's what got my foot in the door though. So I'm still learning though. It's a learning experience. I still don't really know what I'm doing with it. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I find that hard to believe. So
Depends on the day.
you both have told us stories about how you came together, to form the band and to make the music that you're making. But how did music become a thing in your life, right? Like Joe, I know your parents are musicians, or one of your parents is. So why don't you tell us about that? How you got into, just became interested in music in the first place.
Yeah, for me, it goes back far in the blood. I mean, it's my dad. My dad was a musician his whole life, and he was a band director. He was a middle school band director. God bless him. I don't know how his ears could take it. I couldn't do that, but he did it for over 35 years. And but he was also a baritone sax player and pianist and organist. And music was just always around. And his thing was he never taught me personally. When it was time and I was interested, he let me become interested myself. He was the kind of person where instruments were around. They were never forced on me, but they were always available. Snare drum was the thing I was first into. Believe it or not, my first favorite musician was Phil Collins, so I wanted to be a singing drummer. And I lived out that dream a couple times of like playing drums and singing like Levon Helm style at a show of ours, but it's not what I do. It's not my expertise, but that's what got me started. And then around 10, 11, he took me to his friend instead of him showing me. I got some guitar lessons from his buddy. Even though he was a great teacher, he believed that it should be not the parent that taught. And I believe that too now. And then from there, I taught myself guitar using the internet, like in the early aughts, like, when I was like 11 years old, using chord.com and stuff. And from there, learning all the chords for David Bowie albums and Beatles albums, and James Brown songs, which are often one chord, but you have to be a really good rhythm player to play one chord James Brown song. Of course, it's even harder than playing a 10 chord James Taylor song, if you ask me. I started writing my own songs eventually, like when I was 12. And then the whole thing just snowballed into having garage bands through high school, and then us forming this band, our first band with other people called Thomas Wesley Stern in 2010, which is the story we told you. And that band stayed together for 6 years, put out a couple records, and traveled all around America and Europe together before that band disbanded. And then around that time, 2016, is when me and James decided to continue no matter what. And our duo, Jackson Pines, was then born. We can pick that thread up, in a bit. But James, you should tell them about how you started with music as well.
Yeah, I didn't want to play sports. So my mom said, you got to do something. So I did baseball for a while, and me and my brother did. And we'd both sit in the outfield and pick grass, and the ball would just fly over your head. But it didn't last long. But then I actually started with a flute. She bought me a flute. And I did that for about a few months or a year. And then I got a clarinet, did that for another few months. And then I got a bass, electric bass. And my neighbors had a chicken coop with a drum set and a guitar in it. So we would go over there and just play MXPX songs or whatever the heck was cool at the time, and just figure it out and ride the wave. And then I think I was 12 or 13, but that's ever since I started figuring out like how a song comes together and how it works. Like it just kind of really grabbed a hold of me, and I like the whole process. And ever since then, I just always something I have to do, either if I'm doing it for 10 people or 100 people, it's just, I think it gets in you, especially at that young age, and you just ride it out until whatever happens.
Yep. You caught the bug. Well, So in the course of the first segment here, we've heard you guys talk about folk music. You've mentioned Pete Seeger, and Joe referred to the first decade of this century as the aughts. So we're going to take a break because I need to go get some Metamucil and pull myself out of this depression of feeling old. And in order to go to break, I'm going to play the most uplifting depression song I've heard in a while. At least the music isn't depressing. It's called the Depression Song from Jackson Pine's latest album, Pine Barrens Volume 1. This is Roots Music Rambling.
Things were mighty tough down in the pines, 1929. Sat in a city for a bowl of soup, city folk waiting in line. FDR sent me down some jack, sent me down some hobnail boots. Folks start dancing on Saturday night, my how the splinters flew. They had good times with those bad times, and a lot of making do with what they had time.
Welcome to the Flash Finds podcast, the world's fastest podcast where we explore how Facebook can help you with the stuff you're into. I'm your host, Emma Rogue, and today I'm with creator and home decor guru, Julie Souza. Julie, what's your number one tip?
So if you're into home decor, I would suggest looking into Buy Nothing Facebook groups. It's a great way to explore your style, all for free.
Ooh, we love free stuff. Thanks, Julie. See you next time on the Flash Finds podcast, all about discovering the stuff on Facebook you care about. Bye.
It's a road, it's a block, it's a dead end, and then it's a house. Not there now, but a ghost still laughing in the living room. No one's around, and the woods are waking up again.
That is the new single from Jackson Pines. It's called Control Burn. You can find that on Spotify, and we will make sure there are links to that and all the other things we're playing here on the show this week in the show notes. So let's talk about the song, Joe. It's I think, a little bit different sound from most of the cuts on your most recent album. Tell us a little bit about Control Burn and where that came from.
Yeah. So Control Burn is one of our original songs. And like I was saying before, when we kind of ride this double track as a band where we play traditional folk material, we also play original songs that we write. And the original songs can range from sounding very much like the folk material that we interpret from where we're from. But some of our original music is also completely our own and is influenced by, like what we said before, how we grew up playing punk music and emo music and indie rock. So we kind of have these, like, this bipolar sound, which I love. And like, maybe it's not the best thing for the industry, like looking out for us, because we don't have this like solid track. We're very ADHD. But in a set, you can hear us play a fiddle tune from the 1800s that is legit from our home county. And then you can hear us play a song that we wrote like 2 days ago that is not a fiddle tune, that is very much from the ilk of, like, you know, indie rock from the last 20 years or the last 10 years. So Control Burn is, a single that I love. And it is a song we wrote 2 years ago. And where we grew up in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, which, you know, New Jersey, again, it's like this super dense, crowded, small state. But somehow there is a 1.3 million acre forest reserve that is very desolate in the middle of our state. And every year they burn the woods to help, you know, assuage forest fires later in the summer. So every year, cyclically, as we grew up, there'd be this time of year where it'd be a sunny day, but there'd be smoke going past your school, coming through the windows, or in the bus when you were going to school, or you'd be playing outside, and there'd be like the light would turn from, you know, bright sunlight to this like hazy gold. And I always remembered that. And what it does is it, you know, A, it helps forest fires, like I said, not be so bad. But two, it helps the pine cones open up, that can only open up when it's like over a certain amount of hundreds of degrees. So it's this idea of destruction bringing forth new life, that, like, we were like, well, there's a song in there somewhere. It's from where we grew up. It's from our soul, our heart experience. And it just so happens to be about, you know, like losing loved ones. You know, me and James have both gone to a bunch of funerals in the last few years for members of our family, some that died of a nice ripe old age and some that died far too soon. And the whole song is just grown out of that seed of the feeling you feel when you drive past someone's house that you loved and they don't live there anymore because they're gone. And in this song, it's specifically because they're not with us anymore, but it could just be someone who moved away. And it's about that feeling of when you see that house and then all this stuff just kind of blossoms in your mind. And that's what that song is. And that's why we try to make it sound the way it sounds. It's we recorded this one. We do a lot in big studios and a lot in our friends' home studios. But Control Burn, we were supposed to record it with a really great friend of ours, this great producer. And he just so happened to not be able to make it. He canceled on us. And instead of like pushing it for a few months and putting this song out in October or something, we decided after practice one day to just do it in James's house. And that's where we recorded our folk record, Pine Barrens Volume 1. We never recorded our original material in his house without a producer, without someone bringing their whole studio into his house and paying them. And we did this just me and him and a couple computers and like, you know, a candle and like a couple beers. And it's one of my favorite sounding singles we put out like since we started the band like 6 years ago. So, you know, we're just glad that people dig it, and thank you for spinning it.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And I have to say, I love all those stories. That really meshes with the spirit of Roots Music Rambler, right? Like writing music and playing music based on where you're from, you know, your roots. Okay. And Joe, when you first reached out and introduced yourself and, you know, Jackson Pines, I did my research, you know, like I did my due diligence, and I was just immediately intrigued by the whole Pine Barrens area. You know, I'm from Chicago, lived here my whole life. I've traveled extensively, never heard of Pine Barrens, that part of New Jersey. And then when I read that you were doing an album, you know, that included folk songs from that region, dating back to like the 1940s, I was like, hold on a second. I need to learn more about this place. Probably going to have to make a trip there. So what more can you tell us about the influence that Pine Barrens, like that region where you're from, has had on your music and essentially your life?
Yeah, well, growing up there, we grew up in a culture that was very much interested in, like we said, rock music, metal, and there was a lot of people who loved rap. But like where we grew up started as a very farmland and a very like not even suburban place. It only became suburban like, a couple decades before we were born. So when we got into folk music and started playing it around the country, our own songs, and songs like by Woody Guthrie and by Leadbelly and by Elizabeth Cotton. And that's where we started with our first band because we were very into the folk revival. People would always say, like, you're a folk band from New Jersey, like, what gives? It doesn't make any sense. And we kind of got that. Like, there was like a disconnect maybe there, it felt like. But then years went by and we kept playing folk music. And 2 years ago, a DJ friend of ours, he was our friend first. He's in a band called the Porchistas. His name is Alan Smith, and he's a DJ in New Jersey. It's well known. It might not be well known in the country, but it's called WFMU, and it's this freeform radio station that has been breaking the rules since like the 1980s. It's playing. They have a show that's just the music of cults, like from the 60s and 70s. They just play like,
Wow.
Charlie Manson and David Koresh. Like they recorded music. This one guy just plays that stuff for an hour every week. One show is just drones, just at one note for an hour. Every week is a different note, but it's a very freeform station. So when our friend who works there, he found an archive of God's honest folk music from where we're from, Ocean County, New Jersey. It's best known for Jersey Shore was shot there, and the beach town nearest us is Seaside Heights, where Jersey Shore is from. And then the other way it's known is there's an episode of The Sopranos called The Pine Barrens. And they go down there and get lost and have to like kill a Russian. And that's the other
Eat the
touchstone.
ketchup packet.
Yeah, exactly. And those are the two main touchstones. And the Jersey Devil is the other one, of course. That's like our cryptid, our local cryptid. So, but we discovered there was this archive of actual God's honest folk music from where we're from, and we decided to, contact the family if we could. I eventually was able to get a blessing from the widow of the gentleman who recorded this music in the 1980s to say like, yeah, we're cool with you recording it and you can play it. And like, it's okay. Cause I didn't want to do this without having like the authority of the family. So this is how it breaks down. So in the 1930s and 40s, there was a gentleman by the name of Merce Ridgway Sr., and he was a bayman. So we have a huge bay called the Barnegat Bay, where we're from. And there was a whole lineage of baymen who were clammers and seafood fishermen. And that's how they grew up. And to entertain themselves, like anywhere else in America or really in the world, they had their own folk music. It wasn't intended to be played live, wasn't intended to be recorded or commercialized, but they had this music. And at that time in the 30s and 40s, of course, the idea of going out and making field recordings of people became popular. So you had the Lomaxes, which, of course, we all know this. So there was a woman by the name of Dorothy Dix Lawrence, who was like our Lomax. And she decided to quit being an opera singer and to go drive around New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania and try to find folk songs and folk musicians. She actually wrote this book called Folk Songs of the United States of America, where she eventually went across the whole country. And she found songs from, at the time, all 48 states. But she featured in it 3 songs from New Jersey by a group called the Pine Hawkers. And that was Merce Ridgway Sr.'s band. So his son, Merce Jr., was born in 1941. And in the 1960s, he came back from being a Marine and he became a bayman himself. And then he started his own version of the family band called the Pine Hawkers, or what some people call the second generation Pine Hawkers. And Merce Jr. is the one who recorded these songs in the 1980s with a professor from Rutgers University, which is like the New Jersey State College. We don't have a New Jersey State, we have Rutgers. And because of that, they made this record that I was able to take the songs, write the chords down by ear, write the lyrics down, teach them to the band. And with the blessing of the family, we recorded them late 2022, put them out in early 2023, and we've been playing them ever since. It's just dovetailed into our set. And they are really interesting songs. I mean, of course, we're biased. It's from where we're from. But we did our due diligence and like picked out from the archive a murder ballad. On this record, there's a prison song. There is a child's ballad that goes back to 1400 Scotland that was found in our hometown in 1936 by a guy named Herbert Halpert. He was another one of these song catchers that was just going around the Northeast trying to find songs, since Lomax was focusing on the South and on like the Midwest and stuff, in Texas mainly too, where he was from. So I know I'm rambling a really long time about this, and you can edit it down, but that is the genesis.
No.
That is the genesis of Pine Barrens Volume 1, was this idea that we spent years, 6-7 years, traveling the country and Ireland and England, playing Woody Guthrie and Leadbelly and Elizabeth Cotten and some songs from the 1800s and some fiddle tunes. But people would always say, but you're from Jersey. Like, what's your folk music? And we would just say, it sounds like us, because we're just playing folk music, and we had our own original songs. But finally, 2 years ago, after this odyssey, we discovered our actual tradition existed, and there was a record of at least this one family's repertoire. And it's a combination of traditional folk songs they heard and their own versions, like New Jersey versions of old folk songs. And then family songs, their own originals, kind of like Woody Guthrie, that both Merce Ridgway Sr. and Jr. both wrote. And then also some songs from the actual aughts, the 1900s, that were just popular songs of their parents that like they just played. And there's some funny, weird ones in there. So we went through, recorded 7, and then we just a month ago recorded the next 7. And Pine Barrens Volume 2 is going to come out in July. So we're going to put out 2 records this year, an original record and a folk record simultaneously, to our, against the judgment of business people. But, the good thing about being independent is we get to do whatever we want.
Right. Exactly. Screw the business people. And by the way, I have to say, Joe, no one could guess that your father's a teacher. I feel like I have a master's degree in New Jersey folk music now, from your little lecture there. It was great though. That's exactly why this show exists. This is so good.
I am absolutely captivated. I'm taking notes. Like any good student would, and you get an A+. Let me tell you this, 8th grade literature teacher gives you an A+. That is so interesting. Yes. Yeah. Love it.
Good stuff. All right. We're going to step out, take another break, and come back and ask a few more questions. But let's hear more of the new album, or the newest album. This is called Mount Holly Jail from Jackson Pines. And this is Roots Music Rambler.
1, 2, ready, and... When you go to Mount Holly, it's there you will sit. Rum and tobacco, you won't get a bit. And there's mice as big as a whale, bound to get lousy in the Mount Holly jail. There's hard times in the Mount Holly jail, hard times in the Mount Holly jail, hard times in the Mount Holly jail, hard times.
That song is called Now or Never. It's from Jackson Pine's 2017 album, Purgatory Road. There's links to that in the show notes as well. And we all just got our master's degree in New Jersey folk music, which is fantastic. I want to turn the conversation a little bit here. And James, I want to ask you, tell us a little bit about touring, because I know you guys have been together for a long time in two different iterations of bands, and you've been all around the world probably in some iteration or the other. But how much are you guys on the road these days? And do you guys travel with kind of the full band that's on the album, or is it just you two sometimes? Give us a sense of when people come to see you, what are they going to see?
Honestly, it all depends on the venue, you know? I mean, because we can do some shows, honestly, it's just Joe sometimes, and then sometimes it's just two of us. They can grow upwards from that to like five of us all together. We'll have some shows will just be the two of us. Some will be us and Cranston playing the mandolin and singing. And then sometimes we'll add our friend Max and James Herman in. They'll play violin and guitar. And it all depends on the venue, really, though. I think that's what carried us so far is our versatility, because we're not like, it doesn't exactly matter. Like we've played for a church full of nuns, and we've played for like a whole venue of drunk people, you know? So we can really pull off.
What about drunk nuns?
Oh, true.
No?
You know? Yeah.
Drunk nuns? No. Okay.
But that's what I think separates us from a lot of people, because a lot of people get into this groove where, all right, we need 1, 2, 3, 4 to pull this off. And it's like, all right, well, he can't make it today, but he can. So, or he can't, you know, so whatever. And you roll with it, and I think you can, and it definitely makes things interesting because you play a lot of very cool venues and meet a lot of, like, that's our whole life, is meeting interesting people. I've met the coolest people ever doing this, and some of my best friends, you know, and it's all, you just got to adapt and roll with it, and whatever works. And if it doesn't work that day, it'll work tomorrow, and just ride the wave.
Wow. So what has been your most memorable gig so far?
Probably playing in Galway, I'd say, outside the bar. We were in Galway. We played You Are My Sunshine, and like the whole street stopped and just started singing with us. There's a video of it somewhere.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I need to find it.
It was beautiful. Like we met these, we went there for a wedding, and I couldn't bring my upright over for flying and stuff, but we bought a acoustic bass at a store. And then, but the day we got to Galway, we met Fergus, his family and stuff, and he gave me an upright bass to use the whole week we were there, and he let me use his. We were playing You Are My Sunshine outside of what's it, Chuck Nuckton?
Yeah, Chuck Nuckton, which is Nectins. They also call Nectins in Galway on Key Street.
We were playing a few songs, and we went into You Are My Sunshine, and the whole street just stopped and started singing with us. And so I think about that like pretty much every other day or so.
That's cool.
But there's been a lot of good ones, you know. It's the best way to live.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely. I mean, that trip, we spent a month in England and Ireland a number of years ago. It was our first band, and it was just a great experience, you know, from playing a person's wedding, or playing at a club a different night. But we also busked like every day for a month when we were there, whether we were in England or whether we were in Ireland. And you just learn so much about playing music when it's not always this hermetically sealed environment of like, now you get on the stage and now this crowd is here for you, or just for that show you're at for some reason. It's different when you have to like earn a listener's trust and earn someone's like attention. And also, like James is saying that, and it's true, like that was us playing for like 60 people in an outdoor area in Galway, and then like about 50 people on the street. Like that's 110 people. That's a lot for just playing on a corner. And that is still one of the best things we've ever done. But this is James, someone who's also not often, like, because we don't like to pump we're really like what they call in the industry a baby band. Like, you know, we on average play for between 50 and 150 people at every show. And sometimes, honestly, we play for no one. You know, you travel around, you leave where you're from, you play for 2 people sometimes, you know. And it's feast or famine sometimes when you're doing it on your own. But James saying that, and I respect him for saying, because that is one of the best performances we ever did was for those people on that corner. But also we did one time get to play for thousands of people. And that's what I'll say. If he said that, I would have said a different show. But since he said that, and that was great, I'll say that my favorite memory is one time me and James did get invited to a big dance, and we got to play a festival called See Here Now, and it's in our home musical town of Asbury Park.
That was the next thing I was going to say.
Yeah, and that day we got to like play on the main stage. It was the second main stage of the whole festival, like not the one that the headliner at the end of the night played on, but that would go back and forth. And we got, invited to play by the photographer Danny Clinch and the writer Tim Donnelly, and we got to open for Ani DeFranco, Dr. Dog. Dr. Dog played right after we finished our set. Like they were like watching our set from the side stage, holding like their babies and stuff, and we were like, "What?" And like I'm from Jersey, but I've lived in Philly for years, so that was like wild because they're a big Philly band. And Pearl Jam headlined that night. The Avett Brothers played, and like it was just that was like about 3 years ago, and just to like get that shot to play at 1 p.m. at a big festival, but on one of the big stages with the real sound system, and we had our 5-piece band, and we just put out Close to Home. And we played Basement Days as our last song at that show. It might be the only time we ever played it live, honestly. But that show was like, we put out Close to Home knowing we were going to play that festival and knowing we need to have a festival caliber album, like that could be played through the big sound system. As a band that's used to playing, we would play half our shows with no PA, no microphones. And then like we're playing a show like that. So I would say that the two of those kind of encapsulate our best experiences. Playing to 100 people with no mics, with musicians we met the morning of having a Guinness at 3 p.m., doing You Are My Sunshine, like the American standard, what makes American music so beautiful in Ireland, where they appreciate it almost more than in America. You don't go to Ireland and play Irish music, you play American music. And they go, oh, that's interesting. Because it's not, usually people come to Ireland and just want to play Irish music. So somewhere between that corner in Ireland and our home beach, Asbury Park, but actually getting to play for like about 2,000 people at 1 p.m. Those two things are definitely, it's not what we do every day. And we don't pretend on the internet or in things in real life we're not that kind of band. But once in a while we get a shot. And I think that whenever we get one, we hit a pretty good ground ball. And, it's just been fun to have that experience.
James, don't mind the baseball reference, okay?
Oh, yeah.
We know it didn't work out for you, but...
I'm a professional bunter, I just fucking tap it and see where it goes. But
you got to have those.
But no, I was to talk about that. I remember me and Joe were like we drove in early to the festival, and we were hanging out behind the stage we were playing on, and all of a sudden you just hear Eddie Vedder from like across the ocean, like across way down the beach. He started practicing My City of Ruins, the Bruce Springsteen song, because he sang it the actual night of the festival. But it's still like, I don't know, I think about that, pretty much a lot of days too. It was just such a... See Here Now is one of the greatest run festivals, ever to, as far as I know, ever to exist. I mean, it's the way they treat people and who they get to play, it's an awesome time. So that was a beautiful thing to just hang out and experience that. So
very cool. Well, we've got listeners out there, I'm sure, intrigued enough to want to experience you guys. So give us a little preview. What's coming up over the next few months in terms of, I know you said you got another album coming out. You've got actually 2, I think, coming out, an original and more folk songs. But where are you guys going to be? Where can people find you?
So for the next part of the year, we're going to be working regionally in the Northeast. So we're going to be playing, the next thing we're going to be doing, when does this come out? You can cut this part out. When does this come out?
This mid-July.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. Here we go. So we're going to be playing regionally for the next few months. I actually had my first kid late last year. So we're working within like the tri-state area and in New England and stuff. So live, we're going to be playing July 20th in New Jersey in the Pine Barrens at our home venue. And it's called Albert Music Hall. And you wouldn't believe that this place could exist in New Jersey. Like, we understand the stereotypes and everything, and they're mostly right. But in South Jersey, in the Pine Barrens, near the bay that we were talking about, there's this place where folk, old-timey country and bluegrass music is played every Saturday of the year, except the week of Christmas and New Year's Eve.
Wow.
Everything from pros that are like wild above us tier-wise, to baby bands like us that are doing our best but do our damnedest, to amateurs that sometimes get to play their first bluegrass concert on that stage. We're going to be playing our new record there, Pine Barrens Volume 2, for the first time in its entirety on July 20th there in Waretown, New Jersey. And it's obscure, but we'll be there. Then we're going to be working our way up the coast. We're going to be playing on August 29th in Asbury Park. So again, it's in our area, but it's a famous town. If you ever come by New Jersey, come to Asbury Park and check out any band playing there on any night. It's an amazing place. We're going to be playing at the Wonder Bar, which is where, again, I keep dropping the name, but it's where we come from. That's like where Bruce will play like a surprise show. No one will know. He'll just like pop in with the band and just play for 3 hours. And everyone finds out he's in there and it gets mobbed and then he leaves. So it's that place. He won't be there that night. I promise you he won't. But we'll be playing there on the 29th of August. And then we're not supposed to announce this, but I think it'll be announced by the time this show drops. But we're pleased to say we're going to be playing the Philadelphia Folk Festival for the third time. And it's a really big folk festival. It's the oldest folk festival in the country. It predates Woodstock. It kind of invented the big field festival in the whole country, actually, in 1957. And we were lucky to play it a few years ago, and they're inviting us back. And we're going to be playing our original music from the album Wheel and the new old folk songs on Pine Barrens Volume 2 as well. And that's going to be, it's August 16th to the 18th in the woods outside of Philadelphia. It's up in Northeast Pennsylvania. And that's going to be our big show of the year. So we're really happy to say that we've got another big festival coming up.
That's fantastic. I can't wait. And hell, I may just try to hop in the car and come see it. That sounds like a fun time. And of course, all of you out there listening, if you want to hear any of this stuff, we're going to put links in the show notes to all the albums, all the songs, all the good stuff. And certainly the Jackson Pines website, so you can follow them on the socials and learn more about their music. Go out and see them if you can. They are Jackson Pines, Joe and James. The new single is called Control Burn. You can find that on Spotify. We've got the 3 albums linked as well in the show notes. And I want to go out with a song that actually Joe just mentioned, at least the song from the album. It's called Wheel. It's from Jackson Pines. Pickin' the Grinnin is next. Don't go away. This is Roots Music Rambler.
Goddamn, this wheel don't roll anymore. Feel we're always stuck in no time. Hold me, you know you will. Anyway, don't let me down. Don't let the whistle whine. Let off the chain. Stepping through southern pine, let me get what I want. Let me go. Let the wheel roll along.
Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. Great talk with Jackson Pines. Lots of fun. Go check those links out in the show notes. I feel smarter having talked to these guys, and I can't wait to go see them live at some point. Hopefully we can make that happen. So thanks for hooking us up with that, Frank. I'm glad they reached out to you.
Yeah, I'm so glad too. And I am serious. I am going to try to figure out a way to get out there maybe this summer and see one of their shows or something. But I really want to see that area of New Jersey. It just seems to me, it's just so interesting. But in addition to being a grammar nerd and, a music lover, appreciator, if you will, I really do love to experience different and new places, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be some obscure country, tucked away in the Himalayas or something,
Right.
central New Jersey would be just as exciting for me.
There
It's
you go.
new and a new place to learn about. So yeah, I'm really going to try to make that happen.
Well, if you're an appreciator, then I get to have spaghettis with Mom. So we'll keep that keep that in mind for in a couple weeks when I come visit you and your
Oh my
mother
God. Okay.
in the Chicagos.
Please don't make my mother have a heart attack.
Yeah, I'll call it the Chicagos too, just to
Oh
throw
my
that out.
God.
All right, it's time for our Pickin' the Grinnin' segment. This is when Frank and I pick music that we've been listening to that maybe we've found. Maybe it's new music, maybe it's old music, but it's stuff that we're like, hey, I'm listening to this and I want to make sure everybody else is too. And so, I'm going to throw you under the bus this week. Frank, why don't you go first? What's your pick for Grinnin' this week?
All right. Well, as the parent, a teen, and those of you who have teens or had teens, you can probably sympathize, right? Like sometimes it's a stretch to find things with which to connect with your teen. Okay.
Yep.
So my teen and I were driving I was dropping her off at the train to go to school. And she said something about, she was wearing a black t-shirt. And so the term black t-shirt came up. And every time I hear somebody talk about a black t-shirt and all these years since the late 90s, I'm triggered and I start playing in my head the song. Hold on, I got to find the exact title. I know the name of the album. Oh, Song for the Dumped by Ben Folds 5.
Ah,
And so that album, Whatever and Ever, Amen, when that came out, it came out in 1997, and I secured it, probably soon after. I wore it out, right? I loved that whole album, but that song just always cracked me up because if you don't know the song, and Ben Folds is just he's just one of those people that I think doesn't get the recognition that he deserves. So the song is about being dumped. So he's singing it to his ex and he's saying, "Give me my money back, you bitch." And then give me my money back and don't forget to give me back my black t-shirt. And from day one, that tickled me and I don't know why. So I in the car with my teen and we were talking about black t-shirt. I said, "I have to play the song for you. I just have to." And so she was giggling and stuff about it. So, good song, heard, connection made with the teen, win-win.
very good. Oddly enough, Ben Folds is one of the handful of artists I've seen more than once live.
Oh, okay.
And coincidentally enough, based on your story, it's the only reason I went to see him live more than once was because an ex-girlfriend that I went out with was a big Ben Folds fan.
And there you go.
He's very good, very talented, very good live. And so, yeah, she probably would have things like that to say to me these days. No, out of all respect for her, I won't go there. But nonetheless, I'm going to stick with the black theme, though, because I just picked up Happiness Bastards, which is the new album from the Black Crowes, which has the single that's hit the charts here off the top of the album as it came out a couple of months ago. Waiting and Wanting has just been kind of an earworm for me lately. Getting a lot of playtime on WFPK, the local, sort of independent music station here in Louisville. And I've always liked the Black Crowes. I have several of their albums, and I wasn't sold on getting the new one because they hadn't really come out with a new album in a while. But I heard that song and I was like, okay, that's a little bit of an earworm. And then I Spotify'd a couple more and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go get that. And honestly, it's pretty damn good. I don't think it's their best album, but it's their first album in a long time. The Robinson brothers are kind of back together and not fighting anymore. And they sound great. It's a really good album. I enjoyed putting it on. I'll enjoy putting it on. I have the vinyl. And so I'll put that on a few more times, over the course of the next few weeks, and I'm sure I'll play it frequently thereafter. So, Happiness Bastards is the name of the album. You'll recognize it on the shelf because it's kind of a white album with the word Happiness Bastards real big and black on it, so you can't miss it. By the Black Crowes. That's my Pickin' the Grinnin' for this week.
All right.
How about that? Cool. I think that wraps it up. You got anything else you want to share?
I saw the Black Crowes They played on campus at Michigan State when I was a freshman.
Wow.
Sophomore.
Goodness gracious.
Sophomore, yeah. They
I bet
played.
that's back when Rich actually looked like he was in his 20s or 30s instead of his 90s, which is what he tends to look like these days.
Well, what was the name of the album? The real popular one with Hard to Handle.
Shake Your Moneymaker.
Shake Your Moneymaker. There you go.
And then the second one was the better one, the Southern Harmony. I can't remember the full name of that one.
Okay.
But that album was fantastic. I have that on the vinyl. And I love that album. But I liked both of those. I always thought the Black Crowes were great.
Yeah, it was a really good show. It was a long time ago from what I can remember. It was,
I just saw a clip on TikTok or something the other day. They played in London, and not only did Steven Tyler come out and do a song with them, but Jimmy Page came out and played guitar with them. So I mean, these guys are some heavy hitters. I mean, they're good. They're real good. So there you go, Black Crowes. All right, folks. Rootsy Music Rambler is a production of Falls and Partners. Copyright 2024. Our theme music is Sheepskin and Beeswax by Gentacorum. Join us online at rootsmusicrambler.com and make sure you mash that subscribe or follow button so you remember to join us for the next hoedown and throwdown. She's Frank.
He's Falls.
And whatever you do, kids, ramble on.